How's it going, everyone? James and Ben here for Odds Checker. We're going to be taking a look at Saturday's UFC Vegas 56 event, which goes down at the Apex in Las Vegas. Let's get everything on the screen here. We're going to start, as we usually do, on the main card. Alonzo Menefield back in action, going to be taking on Asgar Nazarov. And right now, it looks like Alonzo Menefield is the slight favorite here, around minus 160. Asgar is the underdog. Ben, who are you leaning towards in this one?
I like Menefield. I think he can just, kind of get some volume out on the feet. I'm not really too heavy on either side here. It's kind of a stay away from me. I don't really love taking the juice with him. That loss against William Knight, he didn't look the best, but I'd say Knight's a little better fighter than Asgar. So it's kind of a pass for me on this one. I don't really have a side, but if I had a lean, it'd probably be Menefield.
I feel the exact same way. And don't worry, this whole show won't be like this, I'm sure. But yeah, we don't know a lot about Asgar, right? He's going to be making his promotional debut. He hasn't fought in a while. Menefield, I'm with you. He did not look good against William Knight. And I think consistency has been an issue for him in the octagon. There's some fights where he looks great, and then there's others where he doesn't. The last fight being a prime example of that. Against OSP, same thing, got finished in that fight. I did speak to Menefield this week. Interesting little tidbit. Take it however you want. Apparently worked with Pat Barry this camp. Now, if you remember, Pat Barry was sort of the culprit of what a lot of people feel like was the reason that Rose Namajunas and Carlos Esparza had such a bad fight, that the cornering advice wasn't there. So I don't know if that'll help or hurt him, but that was one little tidbit that he told me leading into this fight, was that he spent some time training with Pat Barry. So we'll see if that works or not. I'm with you, though, slightly towards Menefield, but this is a fight I'm going to be staying away from for sure. Let's get to the next fight. We've got a really interesting fight in the flyweight division. We've got Oday Osbourne taking on Dashev, and right now you're seeing Oday Osbourne as the almost a 2-1 favorite here, minus 190. The comeback on a Dashev plus 160. Which side do you lean in here?
This one, it will be a dog or pass for me on this one. I do like a Dashev just a little bit. A lot of people see that 4-3 record, but actually 6 of those fights were either in Bellator or the UFC. So he is slightly tested. I mean, 4-3, you kind of tend to think, oh, they don't have a ton of professional fighting experience. But, I think he has enough to get it done here as a plus 160, just being the dog for me, because Osbourne, he looked good against CJ Vergara, but same thing that you were just saying about Menefield. The consistency hasn't really been there for me. He has yet to win back-to-back in the UFC, so we don't really know what we're going to see here. Honestly, from either guy, but just for that reason, I think I would have to take the dog, just because I like that line of plus 160 against two guys who again, just like the Menefield, I actually don't really have a strong side on either one. So for me, it would be the plus 160 side here.
And I told you guys we wouldn't bore you here. I'm going the other way. I'm going Oday Osbourne. I like the improvements he's made since switching up camps. He's been at Syndicate for a while there in Las Vegas. That's been great. The other thing I like in this fight, he's going to be bigger. He's 5'7" compared to 5'5". He's got a 72-inch reach compared to 65. If he can use that reach really well, I think he can keep a Dashev at bay. And like you kind of referenced there, the experience. I mean, Osbourne's fought far better competition overall. I'm liking Osbourne here, but this is another fight I'm with you where I don't feel super confident either. No bet for me, but if I got to lean, I'm going to go Oday Osbourne. Okay, next fight we're going to look at here in the women's division, Playana Botello taking on Karine Silva, or Karine Silva, I should say. Right now, the odds makers have Silva as the favorite at minus 120, plus 100 for Botello. It's a battle of Brazil, Ben. Who are you leaning?
I don't agree with the odds makers here, although it is really close. Just like that point made with Osbourne, it's the same reason I'm going to be taking Botello. She's more battle tested. She's fought the better fighters. Granted, she lost all those. She fought Cynthia Calvillo, Jillian Robertson, Luana Carolina. She lost all those fights, but it is experience. There is something about going out and fighting those fighters. You get to fight against them, and that's something that Silva does not have. This is going to be her debut in the UFC, so I think that experience does give Botello an edge here. And so I'm just gonna have to take her with this good line, because I don't necessarily agree with it, but I do think it'll be a close fight. So nothing strong here again, but I do like Botello a lot in this one. She needs a win really bad too. So I mean, her UFC career could be on the line in this fight. We don't know, but she does need a win very bad.
Yeah, I'm going Silva in this one. Again, not a great read on this fight. The activity level is kind of what I'm looking at too here. Botello is just double checking here. Hasn't fought since May of last year, so it'll be more than a year that she's off. She did not look good in both those losses. In that fight, her win in the UFC is against Lauren Mueller, who has struggled even since being released from the UFC. She actually lost her Invicta fight as well. I like what Silva did on Contender Series. Looked good. I think she edges it out, but again, not a fight I'm super confident in. Maybe you take the over. Over seemed to hit a lot in a lot of the women's fights, so if you're looking at any sort of bet, maybe you go that route or the fight goes to decision prop, but I'm going to take Silva with a slight edge there in the Battle of Brazil. Okay, featherweight division, Mike Trizano, Lucas Almeida. Right now, the odds makers have Mike Trizano as a slight favorite, or moderate favorite, I should say, minus 225. The comeback on Almeida, plus 185. Where are you leaning on this one, Ben?
This is finally a fight I do have a strong opinion on. It'll be probably the first bet I release. Trizano by decision. I really like that one just because Almeida is a really, really fast starter, but outside of the first round, I think Trizano is going to be able to edge it out with grappling. He is more battle tested as well. And Almeida's Dana White Contender Series fight, we kind of saw the same thing where he comes out fast and then he ends up losing in a decision, which is how I think this fight's going to go. He got outlanded in that one. I think it's going to be kind of the same thing against Trizano. So I think outside of the first 5 minutes, outside of a first round finish for Almeida, I think Trizano will get this one done just with volume and power and get it done by decision.
Mike Trizano's got 2 losses. They're not bad losses to have. One of them's to Grant Dawson, who's not even in the weight class anymore. And Grant, we've seen what he's been doing at lightweight. And Hakeem Dawodu, who I've known for years. I live in Canada. Hakeem's someone who's, I've been following for a long time. He's a very good fighter. So not bad loss to have on the resume. Like you said, more battle tested. He's just good everywhere. I think with Trizano, the big issue with him has been activity. He hasn't had a lot of fights lately, but the last fight, even though he did lose, I thought it was still a pretty competitive fight regardless. So to me, definitely. I like Trizano here. I think Almeida, he has more fights, but the level of opposition just isn't there. I like the Trizano by decision prop because he hasn't finished a fight in forever. So I'm with you there too. I think if you want some better value than -225, you go.
Yeah, I was going to say the juice. Yeah, I'm going decision just because that juice. I don't really want to lay -225 on anything. So just to knock that juice down a bit.
Yeah, and I think all of his fights have gone the distance other than when he fought on The Ultimate Fighter. You have to go back to Bellator when he fought in Bellator in 2017, the actual official last stoppage he had, because those Ultimate Fighter fights were exhibition. Just FYI, throwing that out there. Yeah. Okay, co-main event. I'm curious your thoughts on this one. We've got Dan Ige taking on Evlov, and the line on this is crazy. And I get it. Trust me, I get it. But Evlov, -400. The comeback on Dan Ige, +310. What are you thinking here, man? This is a really wide margin.
To be honest, I know a lot of people aren't probably going to agree with me, but I like the underdog in this one. I like Ige just because of the line. If Evlov was not -400, I probably wouldn't be looking at this one. But I think it is worth a stab. Obviously, everyone knows Evlov's going to go with that grappling, and he's going to look probably excellent. But Ige's a wrestler. I think he can maybe give him a little bit of a fight. I just think +300 is too much on this guy, and I think a lot of people see that 15-0 record with Evlov, and they're just slamming him, putting him in parlays, that kind of thing. 'Cause he's 15-0, he's undefeated. But I think it's a little more complicated than I think Ige he's a really strong fighter, and I think he can give him a little bit of trouble when the fight hits the mat or even up against fence. So I think +300 would be worth a stab just on Ige here.
Yeah, and this is something, we'll be talking about this, I'm sure, in weeks to come, but, you got to look at value here. There is a lot of value on Danny Ige at +310. You got to look at who he's fought. Everyone that he's fought would have competitive fights with Evlov, in my opinion. Josh Emmett, you look at the names that he's competed against, the level of opposition is not even close. Ige's fought far better opposition here, and he's not getting finished. That's the thing with Ige. 20 fights, never been finished. He's got a granite chin. We've seen him, take a lot of good shots. I think where the line's sort of going this way is because we saw, especially in that Korean Zombie fight, where Zombie sort of wrestled him in that fight, and Ige had troubles with that. Whereas Evlov's, superior wrestler, superior grappler. I think people look at the style matchup, but I'm with you there as far as the line. However, I still think Evlov gets this done. This is a really risky fight for Ige. I'm surprised he took this, to be honest, after a couple losses, because I'm sure he could have fought, maybe a veteran, someone with a, little bit better style matchup there. Now, one little interesting thing I know is that Ige did switch camps for this fight in particular. He's been a mainstay at Extreme Couture. He actually went down to Elevation Fight Team training with Justin Gaethje. So, Gaethje's a pretty good wrestler. We'll see. I know Gaethje doesn't use his wrestling, but you sort of get the idea there that I think, definitely switching some things up for this camp. So we'll see if that pays dividends or not. I think the play here actually is Evlov by decision. He has not finished a lot of his opponents. We saw him, basically out wrestle Hakeem Dawodu his last fight. I think you could see a similar thing happen here with Ige. He's not going to finish Ige. So I think if you do like Evlov, you take the decision prop. Otherwise, I'm kind of with Ben here, where if you do feel even somewhat confident in Ige, maybe you throw that +310 there, because the line is way off here. But my play is going to be Evlov by decision to grind out a decision against Dan Ige, but we'll see what happens.
I do like that decision prop just because of what you're saying, Ige's durability. But yeah, this is probably the best fighter that Evlov will face, besides where he did fight Hakeem Dawodu. So, he's pretty good too. But this is a step up for him. This is going to be a tough fight for him. I don't think this is going to, once the fight starts, I don't think it's going to look like he was a -400 favorite coming into the fight, even if he does win it. But yeah, I think edge out by a decision would be a good bet on this one. Also on the other side.
Yeah, and I want to say when I looked at it earlier this week, I think it was plus money or close to plus money or something. It was actually like really good odds or something. So yeah, I'll have to double check that. But again, it's not going to be minus 400. So if you like Evlov, better than betting that chalk. Main event: Alexander Volkov, Jairzinho Rozenstruik. Interesting heavyweight fight here. We've got Volkov as the favorite at minus 160. The comeback on Biggie Boy is plus 135. Who are you leaning towards in this one, Ben?
This one's a tough one for me because, Volkov, if this was a few fights ago, I would definitely be taking him in this one. And I think the line would be a little bit higher, but, he hasn't necessarily looked the greatest over his last 3 fights. He's 1-2 over his last 3 fights. And, he got that unanimous decision over Tybura, but it was a close fight still. He barely outlanded him on the feet. Tybura was shooting, I think he shot like 16 takedowns in that fight and he didn't land any of them. So, Volkov's takedown defense really stood up in that one, but it was still a pretty close fight. And I just don't necessarily think he's looked amazing over his last 3 fights. I still think he's better than Rozenstruik, but I think, getting plus 140, I might actually take the underdog in this one as well, just because Rozenstruik does have power to put Volkov's lights out. I don't know if he necessarily will, but he just doesn't throw enough volume that I'd be confident picking him. So this one's actually tough for me as well. But if anything, I think I would take the underdog because I do think Rozenstruik has that power to knock him out if he can land that shot.
I'll tell you what, Ben, I am taking the underdog here. It's 5 rounds. You've got Rozenstruik, who's got some serious knockout power. Now, look, I agree with a lot of your points there. I think Volkov is the better fighter. The problem is this is not the 2019 Volkov. This is the 2022 version. And what really stood out for me is those last couple fights. You mentioned the Tybura win did not look great. And then Tom Aspinall, and I get it. Tom Aspinall is the future of this division. He looked outstanding. He's been doing that to a lot of his opponents. But I expected that to be a lot more competitive, and it wasn't. And I don't know if that speaks more to Aspinall, but I think it speaks more to the decline of Alexander Volkov. And I think you've got a guy in Rozenstruik who has knockout power. And granted, Volkov's tough to take out. I mean, Aspinall submitted him. He didn't knock him out. The last, I think, knockout loss he had was Derek Lewis. Literally at the last second, he got knocked out. But it's a 5-round fight, and you've got a guy in Rozenstruik who I think is better conditioned now. I actually spoke to him ahead of this fight. I know he's been doing a lot of swimming, and I think he'll be a little bit faster this time around. All he has to do is get on the inside and knock him out, and and hit him on the button, and I think he can knock him out here. So I like Rozenstruik here as a dog. I also like the knockout prop. I think you're going to get a little bit better value there as well, because I don't think Rozenstruik's going to win a decision. I think he's going to go and do kind of what he did to Augusto Sakai and just sneak one in there and knock him out. And it's honestly, it's more a fade on Volkov than it is picking Rozenstruik as far as my pick there. But yeah, I mean, I'm actually surprised to see Rozenstruik the underdog, just because, again, to me, it's the style matchup. You've got a guy who has knockout power against a guy who just hasn't looked that good, is very slow. I think Rozenstruik gets it done. So I'm with you there in the main event. I think the dogs are going to be barking in that one. So there you go, everyone. That was our, we quickly, undercard. There's actually a fight we both like here. Benoit Saint Denis and Nicholas Stolze. I know you and I both are on the same page here. Tell us your play on this one.
Yeah, I think Stolze's a good bet here as an underdog. It's always a little bit risky betting on guys who have yet to get a UFC win, because sometimes I feel like there might be a little bit of desperation, like they're reaching for their first win, but that can also light a fire under their butt where they're like, I need to get my first win. So I think it can be a risky play to bet on a guy who's 0-2 in the UFC. His job might be on the line here, but I think that'll benefit him here. I think he's a lot better on the feet. If Denis can get him down, then I think this could be Denis' fight. But I think I like Stolze's ability to get up when he's taken down, and I think that his takedown defense can be good enough that he should be able to definitely take care of him on the feet, which is where I think this fight will stay for most of the time. He's the better striker in my opinion. And yeah, like with that fire under his butt, without that UFC win, I think he's going to fight with a little more urgency in this fight. So I like him as the underdog. I think it's good value.
Do too. And I'll tell you why I like him as well. He's a little bit bigger. He's got the reach advantage and the height advantage. And Benoit Saint Denis got the break speed off him in that last fight against Zaleski. In fact, they probably should have stopped that fight a lot sooner. So the amount of punishment he took in that fight, like, I mean, you got a guy in Stolze who, I know he hasn't won a fight in the UFC, but he also hasn't taken that much damage compared to his opponent here. So, I like Stolze here. To me, this is a 50-50 fight. And the fact you're getting Stolze at dog odds, I think there's definitely some value there. So I'm with you. I think he gets his first UFC win here. And I think at plus 135, some really good value there against a guy in Denis who I think, it might take him a bit to get his bearings back, just how badly he fought Zaleski. And that was just a really bad matchup for him where he just took a ton of punishment. And I think that's what's going to end up happening there. So there you go. That is our preview of UFC Vegas 56. I hope you guys enjoyed the card this weekend. We'll be back for next week's UFC 275. For myself, for Ben, thank you so much for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.